force other individuals into their worldviews or to use violence as a means to resolve conflict. Now, violence has always been used to resolve conflict. That's why we have the military and the police. But we really have to understand that the military, the police, the justice system is all supposed to be working for the people. And when it no longer works for the people, and the government is the one using violence to enforce their political will, which they inevitably do because that's the entire job of government, then inevitably we have social conflict where the people who are, say being oppressed or in essentially a roundabout way being forced to do something that they would not like by force of law and violence, then we see people get very upset and they oftentimes lash out in very violent acts. And it's not a reasonable solution for anyone to go to violence. But the problem is simply that when a majority rules over a minority, we end up having social tension. And so we have a socioeconomic divide, and it's been growing and growing, and it's never been bigger than it has been. And that, in conjunction with the everyday person feeling like they don't have a voice, like their voice isn't being heard, it's causing a lot of issues where people feel like they have been oppressed or they have been a victim in some way. And, we've all been a victim in some way. We're all victims. We weren't, we didn't choose to be born. We didn't choose to be born in the country that we were born in. We didn't choose the beliefs that were given to us. They were just given to us. We didn't choose the laws that were given to us. They were just given to us. So, a big problem, what I see a lot of times happens in society and governments when they tend to start trending towards failure, is that the higher up socioeconomic class and, say, the religious and moral figures, they have a very principled and dogmatic view of certain things. And oftentimes they're hesitant to want to change anything because, the way they done it had worked for them. So, it's kind of edgy to want to try new things, to want to try new ways of doing things. So often what we run aground with these officials because ultimately, they don't serve the people that they represent because they're beholden to some majority, some party line majority that they have to toe. Otherwise, they potentially could lose funding from some of their more wealthy benefactors. So there's a lot of complex dynamics at play here. But what we really see is that the society and the laws and that the system of governance that's being built is not being built to serve the everyday person. It's being built to serve the ultra elite, the billionaires, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Peter Thils, the Donald Trumps. And, there's nothing wrong with money. But when we have, say, such few people with such limited scope of reasoning and experience, we can't trust that that's going to be a proper governance system simply because the views are not diverse enough. And they're not going to be able to see the downstream effects of the actions that they're having on the everyday people. So, I'd urge anybody who is in that position of being very wealthy to try to really use first order reasoning and logic to think about the actions that they're going to take. And, really, if they haven't came to Jesus yet, come to Jesus because he's the good shepherd and he's always watching us, and he's always, ready to return. And that's the scary thing, is that he's real. Not only is he real, he will come with fire and glory to judge every single living being on this earth. So it's going to be a testing. It's going to be a trial by fire. John said, I baptize by water, but the one coming after me will baptize by fire. So the word of God is a two-edged sword, and it's sharper than any weapon, and it cuts down to the bone. So when we talk about these things, when we're trying to figure out these social issues, especially when views are not really compatible, we have to really just have a liberty mindset, in which if someone is doing something that you don't agree with, that's fine. You don't have to agree with the way they live, just like I don't have to agree with the way you live. We are all adults, and we have to make informed decisions for ourselves. So the best thing for the everyday person is always going to be to have more and more freedoms and more choice in their lives. The issue is a large majority of these elite people want to limit your choices and herd you like cattle, for the slaughter. My job here is to make sure that you're well informed and that you know what's going on. The things that I'm about to tell you are incredibly dark, and it's incredibly deep. It's at the highest levels of government, the highest levels of intelligence, and they have been complicit. So no matter who you need to understand, the government has been authorized to basically conduct psychological operations. And not only have they been doing them, they've been doing them for well over 100 years. We know this. Just going back and looking at some of the declassified documents that we've seen, it's absolutely disgusting, some of the things that our government has done. And even more disgusting is what some other governments have done. So it's clear that governments are intended to protect the people, but oftentimes they do not. They serve as political instruments of will for the ultra wealthy and elite. And so if you're an ultra wealthy and elite person, I want you to know right now, as you're watching this video, that Jesus is real. And so, making informed decisions and not trying to harm people, because anyone who's trying to harm another human being, we should say that they should be eliminated. And when I mean harm, I mean, serious bodily injury, things like that. Not words, not, all these emotions and feelings, but, really hurt people. And so this goes into our, Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Mark Zuckerberg. Basically, all these guys have been in legion together for a long, long time. And so they have the keys. They have the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. And with Trump putting in high-ranking members from Meta and from Meta and Palantir and all these other big AI tech companies, it's clear that they are, in a sense, turning their eye to the normal everyday person. And, that's such a foolish thing to do, because these are the people that have propped you up. Whether you like it or not, we can argue about who is competent, right? Whether or not someone deserves billions, that's a whole nother debate. But what we can say for certain is that the people are doing the work. Not only the people doing the work, the people are buying the products. So if you want to make money, it's smart to take care of the people that you're selling to and the people who are making it, right? So, some of the things that I've seen in the intelligence field, and I've been working with intelligence for a long time now, and I've seen some incredibly dark things, whether it's murder, or child abuse. I've pretty much seen the worst of the worst. And I can say that there's a very dark plot within our government and within the tech companies to basically essentially turn you into a robot, into something of like an energy source in the matrix that can be harvested, right? They want to basically plug you into the matrix. And in a way, that's what they've been doing over the past 60 years, right? With MK Ultra, this thing has not stopped. This beast has only gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I guess they say all roads lead to Rome, but it's important that we realize we are approaching the final days. There's a large group of people who have a very different mindset than the average Christian, a completely different mindset. And it would probably shock many of you if you could see how dark some of these people are. But I want you to know that there's a lot of people, there's a lot of good people in the intelligence, and they are actually trying very hard to find who these people are, because they're in from the bottom of the organization they're coming in, and they're at the top as well. And so it's hard to find these people and root them out. But what I can say is they've been working very hard on a bio nano internet of things, like to place biorobotics inside you. We see this with Elon Musk, with Neuralink, and with other robotics companies. We see that they're engineering biological machines to be able to manipulate the way your brain perceives things. For instance, having an antenna in your head, essentially, that would be able to receive signals from the 5G towers. That way they could send pressure waves through cranial nerves and end up having you see something, hear something, or potentially beaming continuous information and essentially overriding your inner monologue and what you would call the seat of consciousness, which would be God. So in essence, these people are trying to bring about the Antichrist system. It's very deep. It's very dark. I'm risking everything coming out here and talking about this stuff even. I'm risking my life. I'm risking my family's lives in some cases. And the crazy thing is, a lot of my family is completely asleep at the wheel. They don't understand that they're injecting their kids with mercury. They don't understand that they're injecting their kids with heavy metals, that the food that they're eating is poisoning, and that when this thing goes online, it's going to kill all these people. So, what they're trying to do is basically manipulate your body to put inorganic compounds in there, whether it's through the foods, the vaccines, or through a direct implant. That way they can control the human body and essentially have this vast sea of endless laborers for their pleasure to be able to dispose of at their pleasure, which is completely disgusting and evil. And so many of these people who are plotting these things